Ladies and gentlemen, let me share a truth that many deny, but all is the why. What's the whiz man? When a man loses a woman of purpose, he does not just lose a partner. He loses the echo of what he was becoming while she stood beside him. In the beginning, he may feel relief. He may celebrate what he calls freedom. I'd understand what we call freedom without understanding is simply a prison walls. Man was not designed to function independently of divine order. It is assignment. She challenges the boy in him to become the man he was always meant to be. But if immaturity speaks louder than identity, he will mishandle her. And when she walks away silent but strong, he begins to feel. And now sees himself clearly. He remembers the prayers she prayed, the dreams she believed in, the moments she saw his greatness. And it stings. But hear me, loss is not the end. Loss is a teacher. If a man listens, truly listens, he will not just cry over what he lost. He will rise into who he was called to be. He will understand that what he felt after losing you wasn't just emotional pain. It was divine correction. That presence is not to be enjoyed, only it is to be honored. So for every woman who walked away because she refused to lower her standard, you didn't just leave, you taught. Now feeling the weight of her absence. This is your moment. Not to mourn, but to mature. Loss reveals value. One of the most profound lessons life teaches us, often through the pain of experience, is that we rarely comprehend the full worth of something while it is still in our possession. When it comes to relationships, especially those of purpose and divine alignment, this truth becomes even more potent. A man may walk daily with a woman who brings peace, insight, loyalty, and strength into his life, yet fail to perceive the magnitude of her presence because familiarity often breeds complacency. What is constantly available is often mistakenly seen as common, and what is common is rarely protected. She shifts environments not just through what she does, but through who she is. She brings order, nurtures vision, supports growth, and sees the unseen in a man. Her presence has the power to calm storms and provoke destiny. If a man does that, and once mishandling becomes a pattern, loss becomes inevitable. It is then, and only then, that many men begin to feel what they should have perceived, the value of what they no longer have access to. In this sense, is not just an emotional event. It becomes a revelatory experience. When she leaves, silence enters. Her voice no longer speaks peace into his chaos. Her presence no longer guards his vision, and her prayers no longer shield his potential. What used to be subtle strength in the background becomes a deafening absence in the foreground. This is where value begins to make itself known. Not because she changed, but because his ability to perceive has finally caught up with her reality. The human tendency is to ignore what is constant. The sun rises every morning and we rarely stop to marvel at it. Oxygen fills our lungs moment by moment and we don't pause to thank it until the air is gone. In the same way, the value of a woman sent by purpose is rarely celebrated until her presence becomes memory. And so, for many men, loss becomes the professor that exposure tried to be. While she was there, she tried to teach him her worth. She showed up in consistency, in encouragement, in love, and in truth. But when she leaves, her absence does the teaching. And yet, some men become bitter in loss. Others become broken. But for the man who chooses growth over guilt, the realization of value becomes the catalyst for elevation. Confronted with one's immaturity, confronted with one's blindness, and confronted with the consequences of what was ignored, the painful beauty of this process is that it introduces a new lens. He may encounter others after her, but now he sees through the eyes of one who has experienced value and lost it. That memory informs future choices. That loss becomes a silent mentor. And though he may never fully recover what was lost, he can become someone who is finally capable of honoring what he once took for granted. In this way, loss becomes a divine mirror, not reflecting what she was alone, but revealing what he failed to be while she was present. Emptiness is the echo of misalignment. When a man loses a woman who was aligned with his purpose, the feeling that follows is not just emotional emptiness. It is the reverberation of something spiritual that has been disturbed. This emptiness is not random. It is the echo of a deeper misalignment, a silent alarm that signals that something once in divine order has been disrupted. He may interpret it initially as loneliness, regret, or even confusion. But underneath those feelings lies a truth more profound. He was connected to something meaningful and sacred, and now that connection is broken. A purposeful relationship does not just satisfy the surface, it's to design. In divine order, companionship is not simply about affection or attraction. It is about assignment. When a woman comes into a man's life carrying wisdom, grace, strength, and vision, she doesn't merely add to him, she activates what is dormant within him. She speaks to the king in him when all he sees is a boy. She nurtures not his ego, but his evolution. He is misaligned in his values, priorities, or identity. Her presence begins to correct those directions, not by force, but by influence. And if he is wise, he will lean into that alignment. But if he resists it, that spiritual disturbance produces a unique kind of emptiness. It's not the absence of company, it's the absence of connection. He may be surrounded by others. He may pursue temporary pleasures, distractions, or even new relationships. But deep inside, he will feel that something is missing, not someone, but something. That something is alignment. And now that peace is gone, not because she was perfect, but because she was aligned with something greater than the moment. Emptiness of this nature is not a void to be filled. It is a message to be interpreted. It does not exist to punish, but to point. And what it points to, where he has deviated from order. Before he lost her, he may have had access to a version of himself that was more stable, more focused, more inspired. But after misalignment leads to loss, he begins to notice that the same confidence, clarity, and calm he once had is slipping away. He becomes restless, not because life is harder, but because life has become quieter in the areas where her presence once spoke. In the stillness of that emptiness, the man is left with two options: to numb the feeling or to study it. Many choose to numb it through distraction. But that silence remains. Others, though, fewer choose to study that silence. They ask deeper questions. They reflect on where things went wrong. They begin to realize it was not the problem. The problem was that he rejected the very thing her presence was trying to align. It rarely shows up as a sudden disaster. More often, it unfolds as a slow drifting from values, from purpose, from identity. She may have warned him. She may have challenged his direction. She may have spoken from discernment, not control. But if he saw her guidance as pressure instead of protection, he would resist it. And by resisting her, he was ultimately resisting his own growth. When she finally leaves, the silence that follows is not just her absence, it is the loss of alignment's voice. That voice didn't just speak to his potential. With her gone, he must face himself. Not the image he projects, but the truth of where he stands. It becomes a space where the voice of divine order calls him back, not to her necessarily, but to the place where he was becoming whole. And unless he returns to that place, no matter who he meets, no matter what he gains, he will feel that same void repeating itself. Because emptiness is not about who left it, it's about what left with them. And what left, in truth, was alignment. When a man loses a woman of purpose, the initial rush of emotions often shifts from excitement to a quieter, deeper reflection. In the early stages, it is common to see a relationship as an exciting journey, an exploration of shared experiences, dreams, and moments of joy. That relationship is gone. He exuberates. no longer daily rhythm. Instead, reflection begins to take its place. What was once a vibrant connection driven by the heat of passion and excitement now becomes a space for deeper contemplation and personal examination. Excitement often blinds us to the deeper layers of relationships. It fills the moment with a sense of thrill and adventure, but this surface-level exhilaration does not always allow for the space to process the true depth of what is at stake. When two people connect, especially when the connection is one of purpose, it is easy to get caught up in the chemistry, the sparks, and the emotional highs. But in truth, those fleeting moments of excitement cannot sustain a relationship built on deeper principles. Purpose, vision, and mutual growth must anchor the bond. Without these, the relationship can fall into cycles of emotional highs and lows. While excitement is an important element of any relationship, it is not the foundation that will hold over time. When a man loses a woman who was an anchor in his life, the initial emotion he may feel could be frustration or anger at the change. But eventually, a deeper, more powerful emotion emerges: reflection. It is in the silence after the storm of loss that he begins to truly process what he had and what he lost. In the absence of her presence, he finds the space to look back carefully and critically at the dynamics that defined their connection. No longer sees the situation through the lens of thrill and passion. Instead, he begins to see it as a whole, as it truly was. He starts to reflect on the conversations they had, the ways she encouraged him, the ways she challenged him, and the ways she made him feel seen, not in the way he wanted to be seen, but in the way he needed to be seen. He reflects on the lessons she taught him, often without words, simply through her actions and her perspective on life. The excitement of the relationship, which may have once seemed like the greatest thing, now becomes a memory, and in its place stands the realization of how that connection helped shape him, how it shifted him, how it allowed him to grow. Is when a man begins to understand the depth of what was lost, not just the companionship or the affection, but the transformation that came with it. This moment of reflection brings clarity, but it also brings a certain kind of discomfort. It is not a peaceful reflection, but one fraught with the weight of missed opportunities, missteps, and regrets. A man may wonder where he went wrong, why he didn't see the signs earlier, why he didn't act differently. He may ask himself why he did not fully appreciate her in the way she deserved. In the rush of excitement, he may have neglected to cherish the stability she offered. Now, that absence speaks louder than any excitement ever did. In many ways, is an external force. It is created by external circumstances, by the sparks of attraction, by the thrill of newness. But reflection is internal. It is a process that only occurs when the noise settles, when the distractions are removed, and when the man is left alone with his thoughts and emotions. This shift from excitement to reflection forces a deeper, more mature engagement with the relationship and the lessons it carried. The high of excitement is temporary, but the lessons embedded in reflection are lasting. This is where growth happens. This is where a man moves from being swept away by the current of emotions to becoming grounded in wisdom. Reflection isn't just help him process the past, it prepares him for the future. As he considers what was, he begins to define what will be. He becomes clearer about what he needs in his next relationship, what qualities he values, and what his role in a partnership should be. The excitement of new connections may still appear on the horizon, but now he approaches them with a deeper understanding. He is no longer looking for the highs and the thrills. He is seeking alignment, purpose, and mutual growth. Reflection allows him to move from being a passive participant in his relationships to becoming an active creator of his own destiny. He begins to see his own growth, not in the excitement of the moment, but in the quiet wisdom that comes with learning from the past. It is this transition from excitement to reflection that leads to maturity when a man stops living for the next thrill and starts living for a deeper understanding of his purpose, his potential, and the kind of relationships that will best support that growth. When a man loses something valuable, especially in the context of a purposeful, meaningful relationship, he is faced not only with the emotional aftermath, but also with the undeniable reality of consequences. Loss is a powerful teacher. While emotions may rage and confusion may cloud his thinking, the consequences of his actions or inactions begin to emerge in their full weight. These consequences are not punishments. They are reminders. They serve to underscore the choices he made, the things he ignored, and the patterns he allowed to continue. But within these consequences lies an opportunity for conviction, for personal growth, and for a transformation that can only come when a man is ready to confront the reality of what he has lost and why. The process of developing conviction from consequences is often slow and painful. In the initial aftermath of loss, it is easy for a man to place blame externally.
You may blame external circumstances for the failure, or even blame himself in a way that is overly harsh or misguided.
However, the true power of conviction comes when he steps beyond the emotional responses and begins to see the deeper layers of his own decision. Conviction, in this sense, is not just about regret. It is about a personal shift in understanding. It is about the realization that his choices were not random and that the consequences are not just external. They are the reflection of something deeper within him. The loss of a purposeful relationship makes a man acutely aware of his own agency. For a long time, he may have taken his partner's presence for granted, assuming that her consistency, her wisdom, and her support would always be there. But when she is no longer present, the realization of his role in the outcome becomes unavoidable. It is no longer about what she did or didn't do. It is about what he did or didn't do. It is about how he responded to her needs, how he communicated, how he showed up in the relationship. When this realization dawns, he is faced with the consequences of his own actions or lack thereof. At its core is about taking responsibility. It is not about wallowing in guilt or shame. It is about understanding the weight of personal responsibility in the outcome of the relationship. For a man, this is a transformative moment. It requires him to step into maturity and own the part he played in the dynamics that led to the loss. It is in this place of ownership that conviction emerges. Conviction is not about looking at the loss and saying, I regret this, but rather I understand now what I missed, what I neglected, and how I can grow from this experience. This understanding transforms him from being a passive participant in his life to becoming an active creator in his future. The consequences of loss are often the beginning of a new kind of clarity. Before the loss, the man may have been caught up in the excitement or the distractions of the relationship, but now he has no choice but to face the truth. What was once unclear becomes apparent. He begins to see how his actions or inactions, his failure to communicate, his failure to appreciate her value, his failure to grow shaped the dynamics of the relationship. This clarity is not easy to bear, but it is necessary. Without it, conviction cannot emerge. Conviction is born out of the clarity of seeing things as they truly were, not as he wished them to be. This newfound conviction is not something that comes immediately. It takes time introspection, and sometimes even pain. But once it emerges, it becomes a foundation upon which real change can be built. Conviction doesn't just cause a man to change his behaviors. It transforms his heart. It helps him reevaluate his principles, his purpose, and his priorities. Through conviction, he begins to understand not just what went wrong, but how he can become the man he was always supposed to be. His actions become more deliberate, more intentional, and more aligned with his values. He is no longer swayed by emotional whims or the fleeting nature of external validation. Instead, he is guided by a deeper understanding of who he is and what he stands for. The consequences of losing a purposeful relationship, then, are not something to fear, but something to embrace as a catalyst for growth. They offer the man an opportunity to rise above his previous self, above the version of himself that neglected his responsibilities or ignored the red flags. In facing the consequences, he finds not just pain, but power, the power of knowing that he can rise from this, that he can learn from this, and that he can become better because of this. Conviction emerges not as a burden, but as the clarity and strength to make better choices moving forward.